Hello, welcome back to the 2025 showcase. Today we are taking a look at The Turning by Disoriented, which I suppose is an appropriate name for somebody who is making a turning thing. What is going on? What's in store for Bithro this time? Now, when I was putting together the voting thread, I did request assistance on getting information on a bunch of these holds because I hadn't played them. And one of the things that I requested, well, maybe I didn't actually explicitly request this, but one of the categories was voice acting, and the description for this hold implies that it does have voice acting, and it wasn't included in there. However, it did say a test of terrible AI-assisted voice acting, so I'm assuming that this wouldn't have been eligible anyway. But hopefully I didn't miss that.
Welcome, Bithro. We've been expecting you. I trust you find yourself in good health. Ready for a challenge?
Is anyone ever really ready for these things?
A fair question. But rest assured, this dungeon is unlike any other. You'll soon discover that here, everything's turning. Quite literally.
I'm familiar with traps and puzzles. But what do you mean by turning?
Every step you take may change your world. Floors will rotate, walls will shift, monsters will, well, they'll just sit there. But let's test your skills right now. Do you dare to face what lies ahead?
I'm sure I've been through worse.
Bold words. You'll need more than that if you hope to survive. Proceed if you dare, First Slayer.
Well, that sure is voice acting. Alright. Author's note. This puzzle type was inspired by Simon Tatham's Portable Puzzle Collection. That's a name I've heard many times. Where it's known as Net. This collection of puzzles is available for free, so download and enjoy. Okay, so these aren't even original puzzles. These are puzzles that somebody else made but being implemented into the DROD engine, which is the kind of thing that can be interesting. Voices created with the help of text-to-speechmaker.com and lovevoice.com. Both allow free and commercial use of audio files. Okay. So, what happens when I step on one of these? Okay, it looks like I get to counterclockwise rotate, and my goal is to have all 9 parts be contiguous in some fashion. Okay, well, this one's a T intersection, so let's put it where all 3 outputs are useful. And I guess that means these two, because they're both dead ends, they might as well just go like this, so I don't have to deal with those. Okay, let's do like this. This is a problem. No, it's not. I can do that. Okay, interesting. Well, I can definitely say I've never done a DROD hold like this before. With the power of scripting. Scripting is one of those scary things where you're never quite sure what you're going to get, and sometimes it can be relatively fun, and sometimes it can be absolutely awful. And I think a large part of what makes scripting good or not good is the predictability of what the script is doing. And in this case, it is incredibly predictable. So that's a plus. Because you step on something and you step on this, you trigger a script. So what am I trying to say? You know what the trigger is for the script. You know exactly what the script will do when you execute it. And you have, in this case, complete control over when that happens and how often it happens. So I think that's sort of like a really good set of, I guess, conditions in order to make a scripting-based puzzle enjoyable. I guess the other big thing would be like custom elements for like enemies and stuff. As long as those have predictable behaviors, they can be pretty good too. But there are a number of times where, like as an example of bad scripting, would have been something like this kind of a setup where you didn't have pressure plates and you just kind of step on a certain spot in the room and it does something. And you might think, that sounds terrible. Who would do that? It's been done, that sort of thing. Where the puzzle is impossible and you're literally just trying to step on the right spot in the room to trigger a script in order to make something possible. Unfortunately, there are even published holds that do that sort of thing. Alright, so is everything going to be the same kind of gimmick then? Just turning counterclockwise? I mean, easy enough to check. Alright, this does not look terrible. Okay. Well, if we have a T on an edge, it's pretty obvious how that should be optimally oriented. Kind of feel almost like a jigsaw puzzle where you start from the corners. It's like you're looking for, you know, a spot that makes sense to start from, that gives you a boundary, and then you're pushing out from there. And I guess technically you don't have to start a jigsaw puzzle from the corners, but I don't think I've ever met somebody who doesn't do that. It just kind of makes intuitive sense. Like, you're not going to start a jigsaw puzzle from the middle because you have so many more considerations, and it ends up being kind of a mess. So I kind of liked how this works. In fact, this is optimal. This is the correct solution. I can tell just by looking at it, because the only way for this to be useful, this passage to be useful, is if it connects upwards, which also means that this middle one then has to be in this orientation. Okay, that looks pretty good, which means we don't need... Yeah, so this is just a matter, again, it's kind of like the jigsaw process here. Like, I see that this one doesn't need to go in this direction. This one has to go like this, which means we can actually just finish up this. Optimizing this is going to be interesting. I wonder... And by interesting, I kind of mean the opposite of interesting. It's going to be a process, I guess, that you can go through, but I don't imagine it'll be all that compelling. Alright, so... Okay, this one obviously has to connect to this, which means that that is done, which means that this one is going to go like so. Now this is a bit excessive because we have a four-way box here. So I think what I'm going to do is something like that. Okay. Looks pretty good to me. I guess I could have started in the end of that in order to avoid taking quite so many steps. Alright, so they are timed. And now we have different colors, and we have lighting used to tell us. Is that just to make it easier to read because we don't have pits? Yeah, because these ones were pretty clear. But this one, because it was a 7x7, I guess it just didn't fit unless you crammed everything together like this. It is still the same orientation, I assume. Alright, well, we know that that's going to go like this. Which means these two are going to just go into it. Actually, not having the gaps makes this look a lot cleaner in a way. So I think I actually prefer this presentation. Okay, well we know that this one has to be down because if it connects to this, then we have a problem. Could be an interesting twist on this to have one of these with two potions, I suppose. So that's going to have to connect like that. Which I think means that this is going to be like that. Which does seem to be connecting up nicely. Okay, that is pointless facing north, so we'll do that. Like so. Yeah, it's not too bad. Oh, this is another T. I could have started with that. But yeah, this isn't too bad, honestly. That one's already, that T's already in place, so we'll connect like this. Okay, which tells me that probably goes like that. Okay, I think I've done something wrong here, because I've stopped trying to reason things out and I've started just going with an intuitive approach because things are just sort of working. And when you stop reasoning and start doing it intuitively, you start making moves that are not actually correct. So this one, I'm pretty sure that this corner has to be this way, which means that this has to connect down to here. Okay, well I have a bunch of extras, so I can actually probably fix this by doing this. Interestingly, we have an extra here, so we're probably going to connect that up to this and then connect this over to something else maybe. You know, for the sake of interest, let's just continue with the intuitive approach and see how it feels to be trying to fix problems instead of trying to avoid problems. Right, so this, what is this corner even doing? I guess I mean, we can do that and have you go through. Okay, and then I can fix that. Okay, maybe. Looks like everything is connected together. Okay. So, initial impression, I actually enjoyed the other way I was solving it better. This was just kind of doing things and then looking for problems and fixing them. Just for that second half, I guess. And I think finding things that are absolutely correct is just more satisfying. And then for optimization, I guess you'd want to do as few sword turns here as possible as well. Also, obviously not bumping the wall. Did something change down here when I did that? I'm not sure what it was I saw there, but it doesn't appear to be there. Okay. Well... Okay, let's start coming up with a few more rules. So this is a straight piece on an edge. That means that it's probably aligned with the edge, because otherwise it's just not being used optimally. Likewise, we've got a corner in the corner. Let's just fix that. Okay, a couple of T segments there. Actually, a bunch of them. And some straight pieces, and a corner. Okay, so that entire top line is basically forced like that. Okay. Anything else? These are a lot of edges. Well, we know this corner has to go to somewhere on both ends, so it's going to have to be like that. Which means the T segment above it is correct. This needs to connect to this, which is two possibilities. I'm inclined to connect it up this way, but that's starting to be intuitive rather than certain, so I'm not going to lock it in. Oh, there's a T over here I missed. Okay. Which means this has to be like that. Which I guess means that these are going to be separate from each other. And we know how that connects up, so these have to connect here because the top is done. That's done. That's a straight piece. It could go across, but we know that this isn't connected, so let's fix the T. T is going to go like that, which means that's going to connect to it. Alright, and that means that you probably face south. Which means that you are going to go that way. As are you, I guess. Okay, no. Something went wrong here, because that goes like this, which means you connect like that. You connect in some way. I'm not sure what went wrong there. I saw that I had a T that was going to two dead ends. Okay. T segment over here. When you're just doing cleanup at this point, I feel like I'm kind of just making assumptions again, but I'm not too concerned about it because there's really a very small probability space at this point. So these aren't terrible as puzzles, but it's very not DROD feeling, which is kind of interesting. I guess that kind of happens when you implement non-DROD puzzles in the DROD engine. But, like, I know I've mentioned the jigsaw puzzle several times already, but I really do feel like that's sort of what this is, essentially. It is a jigsaw-like experience, which, you know, is fine if you're just wanting something calming. But definitely a very different type of experience than your usual DROD. And the city secret wall, very clearly visible, right? This is one of the harder styles to spot secrets in for sure. Okay, we've got a room. This is the starting room. Okay, why was this the way it was? I think because of the tunnels. Yep. I've done this kind of thing before, where I had a word puzzle that I did with some of my students in Korea back when I was doing ESL. And the puzzle was essentially a 5x5 grid, where on one side you would write, like on one edge of a square, you would write the English word, and on the other side you'd write the translation in Korean. And it was kind of like a jigsaw puzzle where you just had to match everything, like you'd cut out the 25 squares afterwards. But to make it more challenging for myself, I then did the outside edges matching as well, which made it significantly harder, because then you didn't have a corner and you had to start a jigsaw puzzle from the middle. It also allowed you to make funky shapes out of it. But anyway, that means that we don't really get that start here, because now I've got this little edge. But like, yeah, we've got a corner in the edge, but I mean, is this correct? Well, it could be, because we can actually just connect both ways. So I think we just pick an arbitrary spot and start vibing. Okay, so this, like, just basically make an assumption and see where it takes you. So this, for example, cannot be correct, because this connects to here and you get a dead end of 4. So that tells me that this cannot be horizontal. So I think, I mean, I guess I can show what I mean here. Like, if we do that, if we assume that this is correct, these 4 are all connected, which doesn't work. Which tells me that these can't be horizontal. So I'm going to start with that assumption, and then we're going to work from here. So those have to connect up. That means that this one has to be facing down, because it doesn't connect to here and it can't connect to another end piece, which means that has to be like that. Now, one of these could be changed. This is an end piece, so it can't actually connect here, so this has to go this way. But this can't go to an end piece. So I think that's telling me this has to be like that, which means that you connect up like this. Okay, we're starting to get somewhere. I think starting this one, assuming that my initial assumption about these was correct, that was the hardest part of this puzzle, was to figure out how to start it. Why am I putting this like this? Because I can, but then I see that this has to connect down, and it cannot connect here because it connects here, and that's a dead end as a result. So I think this actually means it has to be like this. Okay. This could connect like this. In fact, it has to, because this cannot go to an end piece. Okay. So if this is connecting up here, are we going across? Yes, because we have the end piece locked, which means that this does not connect to the end piece. This also means that we have made a mistake. No, it doesn't. This doesn't actually connect there. That was a thing I did earlier, and then I set it aside in my mind as I've dealt with this, but no, that was for demonstrative purposes. It actually is going to connect up to this, probably. I'm not entirely certain about this, so I might have to revisit all of this. But for whatever reason, what I'm doing makes some degree of sense to me. I really shouldn't. I should figure out what's going on here. So this was going across, this was connecting, right. That was the whole point of all of this, was that that connects up to here. Okay, I'm not really liking how this is going. Because, well, maybe this doesn't connect to this. Because we've got a little loop here which is stuck. So if we do this instead, okay, now I'm just kind of doing things again. That connects to here. For a while I've thought that this one goes like this, so let's just put it in place. Which means that's going to be like that. Like so. Right, you can connect up like that. That's fine. This probably connects here. So let's just do it. That can connect to you. I think this whole section is good. Right, you don't need to connect up, so we can do that, and that fixes that issue, and then you just have you go up to this. I think we're done. Presumably there will only be one of these because it was a secret. But yeah, that was definitely an interesting twist on things, to just remove the edge. And the secret was well placed in the level, because if it had been earlier, we might have found this as one of our first rooms, and I think a room like this, you really want to have the player get some experience with the puzzle concept before you start doing things like taking away the edges. Alright. Oh, we might actually finish one of these. This would be the first entry that I finish, assuming it's only one level. And this is a smaller one, okay. Well, we'll start with our edge piece rule, our T rule, but our corner rule. Which means that you have to go like that. Okay, do we have any more rules that we know for sure? Okay, you're going to connect up like this. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then just a few little pieces to figure out here. I guess we're probably doing this. That's not going to work at all. Something went wrong. Something went wrong somewhere along the way. This connects up like this. Which just means that the thing I did wrong was... you connect up that way, that's what it is. Okay. That was my mistake. Somehow I misread something there. Alright, and that was relatively short, another 5 by 5. Well, we know where the blue door is. Exit ahead. These sorts of exit rooms have generally fallen out of style. Ah. But I suppose if we're gonna play with the joke there, everything rotating. Had it been doing that the whole time, or only when I got into the middle? Alright, Bethro suggested to the architect that he should stick with just rotating force arrows for the time being. Okay, well that was the entirety of the turning by Disoriented. An example of scripting to implement styles of puzzles that aren't traditional DROD puzzles. Alright, we will do another hold in the next episode. I will see you then.